Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for joining us today at this group engagement session. My name is Karen Klomp. I am the Wave 2.2 mobilization lead. Please note this session is being recorded, and on the call today we are joined by other members of the delivery partner team. Our speaker today is Russell Irwin, who is the support and remediation lead within delivery partner. As you will know by now, hopefully you've joined these sessions before, this is one of a series of Wave 2.2 SHDF grant recipient group engagement sessions. And the aim of these sessions is to provide you with information to support you to deliver your SHDF Wave 2.2 project. Today, as you can see by the title, we will be discussing project management, project remediation, and this session will provide you with a high-level overview of the remediation process. The format of today's session will be a 30-minute presentation by Russell Irwin, followed by a question panel related to today's content, and that Q&A session will last 30 minutes as well. This session, as mentioned, will be recorded and we will make it available after the session together with the slides, and will be sent to you by the end of this week. If you have any questions about the session, please pop them into the chat during the presentation so that we can come back to your questions during the Q&A panel session at the end. If you're not able to access the chat, we will take questions from raised hands, but please do put them in the chat if you are able to. And please, as a reminder, any project-specific questions, so specific to your project, please direct them towards your SPOC, your single point of contact, in your initial kickoff meeting once you've been assigned a SPOC. Just so you know, your cameras and your mics have been disabled and they will be re-enabled once you ask a question. And I will now hand over to my colleague Russell Irwin to take you through the session.
Thank you very much, Carol. So, hi and good afternoon, everyone. What we are looking at today is to cover the overall performance expectations. So it's a bit of a recap of the monthly customer journey, and it's also how the delivery confidence assessment that we run will consider any early warnings that may fall out about your project out of that monthly engagement process. Just move on the agenda for me, please. So that's what we're going to go through today. So performance expectations, remediation and triggers, what that recommendations process will look like if we do need to go to remediation, the remediation plan, how it's put together, how that progress monitoring for remediation activities is dealt with, and then finally we'll close off with the Q&A panel. Next slide, please. So yes, this performance expectations, we'll look at the customer journey as the first piece. So first slide, please. As I said, these first slides are more of a reminder of the monthly customer journey and how that process leads us to a position where, following through the delivery confidence assessment that we're going to take, it'll consider any early warnings that are coming out of that process and whether or not remediation is triggered. And how that triggering process will run. It should go without saying that our focus during those meetings, along with yourself, the key point of reviewing the options is to try to avoid remediation. So we want your project to progress. Remediation is a last resort item. You'll see that the process leads us through to change request consideration. And obviously we've discussed that previously, how that works. So the change request process, as currently operates, is dealt with through other guidance that we can share. If it is decided that a project change request is the next step as a result of any projects moving towards the triggering points, that will carry a sort of short-term activity to get that PCR raised and assessed, and hopefully that should bring you back on track. Next slide, please. So how to achieve the customer journey. So in order to complete the monthly review process and move the project forward, it's very much dependent upon being able to collect the right quality data and be able to communicate that in line with the specified timescales that's set out in your GFA. So the DP teams are constantly pulling data together as part of program level assessments, but we also look at your project level data, looking for trends that may require action in the form of remediation. But it's not all a data-driven process. There is a reliance on having a clear understanding based on the interaction that we have with you, and the ability for you to be self-aware of any risks to your project delivery. So rather than just working on them in isolation, you keep your SPOC appraised of the activity that's going on in the background, so that in the event you do need some assistance, we're better placed to understand what that need is and the pace that we need to work with you to react to those changes. Next slide, please. So this slide just summarises the various pieces of data that make up your monthly report that we've already gone through, and the delivery partner teams will form an opinion on each project's health based on the level of information and its accuracy in order to identify where those risks and issues may arise. The management of data, is always a good indication of the project health, particularly when you as a GR may be struggling with your data aspect, which could be for a number of reasons. It could depend on your supply chain, what your internal processes are, and what your team build-up is. But the ability to implement those good data practices or not could be an early warning of a need for some remediation. But like it or not, those projects that you're working on, they will rely on good data flow in order to be effective and communicate that effectiveness. Next slide, please. So what is remediation? So, there's a question there. Is it a status? You are in remediation, or is it a pathway to improvement? Or is it possibly a cry for help? Well, actually, potentially it's all three. The two key areas that we focus on are the underperforming aspects, which would suggest that a project may be behind in meeting its projections. That could be either in year or overall for the project. And there may be a risk to delivery where the risk is so significant that there's potential that the project could fail entirely. So that could be something to do with your supply chain collapse, or it could be due to other market forces. So the remediation process can be seen as one that is reactive. Typically, what you tell us informs our decisions, but we are aiming to be in part as proactive as possible to work with you, so that rather than just watch events unfold on a project, we track them, we monitor them, and we determine with you what that need might be in order to correct any underperformance. So we have a position where we'll identify if underperformance is happening, and we look to try and shift that so you're moving towards your project being in green as quickly as possible. So there may be some short-term fixes that we can put in place with you, or in the event of a much more serious issue that's going to trigger longer delays, we can work with you to build a process for corrective actions to be put in place. Next slide, please. So the key messaging is that regardless of what happens, the normal monthly reporting cycle and the assessment process continues. Okay. If a project does enter remediation, so we inform you through the monthly updates that is happening. We'll be having those discussions over time to say this is the direction of travel, but it's very likely that there'll be a need to have a number of interim meetings to set up with you to discuss those aspects that are causing project underperformance and identify where that remediation may be required. And we'll talk through those with you, with your key contacts in your organisation and from your project team, for those who have the most specialist knowledge or understanding, and we'll pair these up with the relevant subject matter experts from the delivery partner to have those one-to-one conversations. But most of these are likely to be held with your SPOC in the first instance, and any further conversations will include your SPOC so that they have the knowledge and experience of how your project's performing overall. But we may bring in subject matter experts just as a specialist need. And where there is impact to you as a consortia, it's not it's the lead members organisation who requires that support in the first instance. And then obviously that lead member is responsible for cascading down that information and knowledge amongst their consortia members as it's needed. So you need to bring in the right people from your consortia to have those discussions in order to correct any actions that are needed. So if we need to develop a remediation plan, it's with the lead consortia members. Next slide, please. Just roll on the next one for it, please. Well, this is just a recap of the triggers for this. So the DCA is discussed in the monthly meetings with you. We'll summarise in your outcome report and summary email that we'll send to you, and that will give you your DCA confidence score. So it shouldn't come as a surprise that your project performance may be moving in a direction towards remediation. You should be well aware of that. So this links back to what we said earlier as part of the customer journey, that we need all of those 3 buckets of information there on the screen to be able to monitor your project performance and, of course, determine the course of effective action should it be required. And all of these processes are time bound, and we need to work together to get that data we need into the systems each month. That's where the real conversations start from, and that helps us to manage those expectations. Next slide, please. So the trigger process generally works on a steady progression. Obviously, we covered that in the previous sessions where we had the 5 statuses, the tier statuses to go through, to the 5 RAG tiers. So your projects work from green through up to green, amber, amber, red, and then red. And then with the stasis of what that remaining is at a particular position over a couple of months. So if your project progresses rapidly through the trigger processes, we can intervene more quickly. But the standard approach is that if your GR remains in red for 2 consecutive months or amber for 3 consecutive months, then the management strategy is triggered, and that could mean remediation activity. But there are occasions where there is evidence that other criteria that are impacting the project RAG rating, such as a change request may be in process of being reviewed and it's waiting a resolution. So that will be weighed against any intent to promote a project for remediation. But equally, if you are struggling with that project change request, remediation activity may be required to support you to get that paperwork in place. Next slide, please. So those are the sort of risk pillars that we work through. So those are the items that we will make the assessments based on as part of the information that you share with us. So a lot of assessment is put into whether the project is set up for success, and all of the core elements of the project, are they there? Are they operating effectively? And obviously this stems from good project management, which we've already discussed, and having those clear delivery plans that are both reasonable and achievable. So we don't want you overstretching yourself and overcommitting to a project that's not deliverable. And getting contracts and agreements in place is always a challenge, as we know, and we'll look at how those relationships are forming, and if they're not already established, in order to get a level of understanding as to what the cohesion of your project is. Because this is essential sort of in meeting the KPIs and avoiding the need to continually reprofile your project. And also the relationships between the parties are often a key to success to recovering any underperforming project. So what do we do with all of that information? Next slide, please. And again, please. So the remediation process as is. So during the monitoring process, the SPOC will take all of those pieces of information, as we said, all of those bits of the puzzle, and we'll start to build that assessment of the project, and we'll identify any areas that may need further probing. So if there are areas that we think we don't have enough information from you in the current report, we look to set up sessions to discuss those and unpack those in more detail. And that may need additional support in order to initiate a course correction. We'll need evidence that we have all the tools in place at our collective disposal, so between yourself and our team, so that we have all the people ready to look at the remediation plan who will be key to that process. So during those conversations, we'll identify where you are self-aware in order to implement the changes needed, or potentially if you need to bring in any external resources from within your organisation to support you, so that we understand that everybody's on the same page about the remediation expectations. And that's the key to getting the performance back to where it needs to be. So once we've done that assessment, gathered all information, we will look to make a recommendation to the delivery agent Salix, and that will be where we propose to initiate a package of remediation works. Now, some of that may be just for yourself to deliver, but we still have to get authorization to move that project into a status of remediation. So those triggers then set out a defined set of actions, and we'll mobilize as part of our remediation team to formally curate a remediation plan alongside you. It's the responsibility of the GR to prepare that plan, and we will support you in those activities, and then we look to present that to the delivery agent. So there is a 5-day target to complete that plan. We'll deploy the resource to assist you in that. Generally, we're in a position where we're able to complete that in 5 days if the level of preparation is there. Obviously, it is a tight timescale to achieve that, so we expect you to put all the resources in place to do that, and we will then follow an escalation process. If we can't meet those 5 days, that 5-day target, we'll escalate that to Salix through a formal approach where we notify that the project continues to require support, but we may be having some difficulty in achieving the 5-day turnaround. Next slide, please. So what's your role in the recommendation process? So as I've said, development of the plan is a grant recipient responsibility, and the delivery partner team will work with you, but we cannot write the plan for you. We're there to assist you, and we will guide you with the information that you need to enter into that plan. That'll be the information that you've shared with us about any weaknesses within the project or any areas that need to be addressed, and we can explore those with you and look to find targeted actions to address those. So our role is to make sure that the plan addresses all of the areas that have been identified from within the risk assessment part of the process. So through the risk pillars that we talked about earlier. So make sure that they have been appropriately captured in the remediation plan. And the detail behind those is sufficiently developed that tells the clear story of what actions you're going to undertake to bring your project back in line. And also what the outputs of those actions are and how we'll measure the success of that and report that up to the various stakeholders. Next slide, please. So 3 stages there on the screen. The first step is to identify what resources are available to be deployed in the remediation activity. Are the existing project team able to undertake that focused piece of work to bring about the change, or do you need to bring in additional resource to support you? That may be through your delivery agent or reaching back into your own organisation. Do you have the capability and capacity to bring this on track alongside your other day-to-day duties? Can your contracting team support you in providing the necessary information you need? We'll also work with you to determine whether, as a group, that we feel that these remediation activities are achievable, and that could be through just your organisation or reaching back into the consortia. And also whether there's a need to sort of reach beyond the level of existing resource that's there. And where external support is seen as necessary, we'll work with you to identify that clearly communicates why the activity cannot be enacted from your organisation, from within the project team. So if you do need to deploy others, and you're seeing that your A&A budget kind of cover that cost, then we'll need to look at that, how that works, so that we can see to report up to the department where there are pinch points within your resources. So again, it is a very short timescale to complete this, but if we do reach those staged conversations early, we should have that preparation in beforehand. And as delivery partner, we'll be providing regular updates to the delivery agent on how those discussions are going. Next slide, please. So obviously each project will be different, and some may have a clearer approach as to how to tackle this task and obviously to achieve the 5-day turnaround period. But others amongst you may be looking for some more guidance on how to keep that on track. But regardless of that, we'll establish the touch points with you. It's good project management, and they'll be agreed between you and your SPOC. So this could be through the use of daily check-ins, or it could be daily stand-ups to morning and end to check in to see how you're progressing. And it could be through some focused sessions to work through the tasks and build that plan collectively. But what it will involve is the set periods to review the plan and undertake a quality assessment before we can promote that plan as one that we feel clearly defines what the issues are, it's evidence-based, and it's achievable in the timescales. So touch points will be with you and your SPOC, and possibly a member of the remediation team who has specialist knowledge to drive that forward. Next slide, please. So on the left there, in the green box, and proactively we look to use the existing monitoring process and the SPOC network to do that, as we've described, and where necessary we'll draw in specialist resource there. So if it's appropriate, we may need to deploy some external contractor resources, but obviously this isn't a shopping list of activity. These are just examples of the broad ranges of skills that we could be bringing to bear to support a project through delivery agent or through other contractors or through consortium support. And we can mirror those skills that you may have to help you get through the bottlenecks and pinch points of your project. But obviously our aim there is to undertake a focused piece of work to help you get that pathway to improvement. Next slide, please. So the curation of a remediation plan. So we've gone over how the plan needs to sort of be developed by yourselves, but the curation of this, the roles and responsibilities need to be set, and obviously just to summarise what the key factors are in this process. So it needs to demonstrate what the skills and knowledge that are needed to remediate the project. It needs to clearly specify what your resource availability is and how that will be deployed. It must have some defined milestones that will evidence what the course correction is for your project. And if there's a need to supplement the resource, it needs to be value for money. So that needs to be the utilisation of your existing A&A allowance in the first instance, as the need to provide any additional support from the delivery partner would need to be evidenced that this could not be provided by yourselves. And where there's an ongoing issue that can't be escalated, can't be resolved at operational level to meet that, then we'll escalate that through with Salix and the department, and we'll try to work through any blockages that you may have in developing your plan with your senior leadership team. Next slide, please. This one speaks for itself. As you're developing a delivery plan, we need to make sure that the remediation plan, we need to make sure that it's well structured. It's got clear definition of what's going to be achieved and stating what those outputs are going to be. We won't be able to promote a remediation plan that has gaps in information if it isn't evidence-based, or if we feel it's not realistic in its expectations. That's our role, to make sure that we provide a robust plan forward. And critically, any timescales that are proposed, they need to be quick enough to resolve what those outcomes are, and also reflective of the financial and reporting constraints on spending, and also they need to be in line with the reality of delivering in the timeframe that you've been allocated. And just like a change request, the information needs to stand up to scrutiny in order to make a decision as to it moving forward. Next slide, please. Well, progress monitoring is the last piece we're going to touch on today. So once the remediation plan is triggered, there needs to be an increased level of project monitoring. This is most likely going to be through fortnightly engagement meetings with yourselves and SPOC, and that will undertake a number of additional discussions if needed. The key factor, though, is the project monitoring needs to have the ability to identify, track, and manage those risks and issues, and make sure that they are given the right amount of priority. So as part of remediation, those interim meetings that we hold will become more formal. We'll issue clear minutes and actions generated from those conversations, and collectively we'll know if the process is delivering to expectations. And what we're trying to avoid here is the failure of any project, really. That results in potential withdrawal from the scheme. And fundamentally, we're all motivated to do this work so we can improve the lives of the people who need these improvements. And the use of good project management will give us that confidence that what we're delivering has been done in time and it's done to the right quality. And we are increasing the confidence of that through our good record keeping. So that's it for remediation for today. So hand back to our chair and we'll start Q&A.
Thank you very much for that presentation, Russell. That was really insightful. Yes, we will now be joined by our panel members, Carlo van der Plank-Jones, who is the Strategic Support Lead, and Ben Summers, who is part of our remediation team. So the Q&A again is related to today's content. If you have detailed questions regarding to your own individual projects, please direct these to your SPOC as soon as your SPOC is assigned to you. As mentioned before, please put your questions in the chat, or if you can't, please use the put up your hand function so that we can unmute you to ask the questions. And if you have any connectivity issues, if you're unmuted, I'll jump to the next question and come back to you later. If you have any feedback on the content of this session, please do get in touch with us via the question form, which was in the communications for this event that was shared by Salix. And at the end of the Q&A, we will share a quick poll question in the chat. It's only a one-question poll, and we will be very grateful to you if you could answer that. Again, it will help us provide feedback to the department and also for our understanding how this session has gone. I can't see any questions in the chat, so does anybody have a question? Do you want to put your hand up, please? You all understand everything about project remediation, which is fantastic. I'm just going to use my chair's prerogative and ask a question to the panel. How long does it take for projects to move into remediation? Who wants to take that?
I'll jump in on that one. Thank you for the question, Karen. So it depends on a few things. First of all, it'll depend on who you are as an organisation. So what we do is we prioritise projects for remediation, and it will be based on the kind of size of project and how much it presents a value for money opportunity for improving that project and getting you into remediation to promote value for the country. So the second element of that is the complexity of the issue you're raising. If it is a particularly complex issue and really needs resolving, if it is something that we can fix within that value for money proposition, then it will be moved in quicker than something that will be a challenge and has to go through more complex approval processes going to the department for approval.
Thank you very much. Does anybody want to come in on that? Or other questions? I'm going to go again. What are the key issues that we've seen so far that could lead to remediation? What are our lessons so far from the Wave 2.1 project?
Jump in again. Fabulous question, Karen. Thank you very much. The key issue that we've seen so far is around project resourcing. Now, that can be either internal project resourcing, so it could be an internal personnel leaving or struggling with the weight of the project or the issues that are arising, or it could be with the procurement side of project resourcing. So project resourcing for remediation is particularly challenging, and we understand this is often a new area for local authorities moving into it. So it is that two-pronged approach, making sure that you as an organization are capable of dealing with this remediation, with retrofit, and have the right skills and experience in-house. And secondly, just really taking hold of this procurement element, because having good communication with those contractors is a challenge that has been seen a few times and leads to big issues. So just make sure you're in constant contact with your contractors and they're giving you all of the information that you need to effectively monitor your project.
Thank you very much. Rafe Bertram, let's get you unmuted.
Hi there. This is may not be such a relevant question, but maybe it's something that could be picked up tomorrow. And that is, I'm still struggling to understand and to get some data on I think it's called the reasonable assurance reporting, to do with independent accountancy, but I wonder, I don't think that's relevant for today, but I just a plea, if it's not relevant today, a plea, could we please cover that tomorrow? Because, you know, things like, I've no idea how much, I haven't put any quotes out for this. I don't really know how regularly it's needed. And I don't know whether it costs £1,000 or £200,000. But any advice or guidance or that process where it's been done before, etc., would be fabulously interesting and really help us how we kind of go through that. But it might be about tomorrow's activities, not today's.
Russell, might I hand to you for that one?
Yeah, obviously we did raise that after your last query, Rafe. So I'll pick it up again with the team at PwC, who may be able to give some more steer onto what that potential cost is likely to be. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and thank you, Ray, for asking that question. Are there any other questions from people listening? And I'm just going to do one myself again. If a remediation plan is needed, if for multiple months you are in amber, red or red, is there any guidance or templates which will be issued? How does it work in practice?
I jump in again. Yes, so as Russell mentioned during the presentation, we're on hand to talk you through that process and guide you to support you to show which bits of information you need. And with that, we have designed a template which has a few different sections which says what you need and when. Now, we'll be there for that 5-day period. We have to monitor you and project manage you through that process. Obviously, we can't do any of it for you, but we will have that template there and we'll be on hand to answer questions and support you through it.
Thank you very much, Ben. Are there any questions that people would like to ask? I'm going to give it one more minute. No, doesn't look like it. If I can ask Kyla to put the poll into the chat, and if I could ask people to respond to that poll, please. And whilst you are doing that, I'd like to thank you for your attendance today. and I hope you are more informed now than you were at the beginning of this session.